Good morning to everybody. I welcome you to this Sunday TEE breakfast session, which we have been having for last few months, successfully being conducted from Bangalore under the banner of Forum of Cardiac Anesthesiologists, which is also the Bangalore chapter of IACTA. I would like to thank the FCA and IACTA for the encouragement and support being provided. And today we will be having a guest lecture by Dr. Rajesh Arya, who really does not need any introduction. He is the National Secretary of the IACTA body, and he has many accolades, and he has straightened out so many issues in the IACTA, and we are grateful to him. And I request Dr. Prabhu Shankar to be the moderator for this session,
Yes,
and
sir.
I
Yes.
request Rajesh Arya to carry on with the talk. At the end, there will be a question answer session. Please post your questions on the chat box. If you want to speak, you can unmute at that time and then talk to the speaker directly or the moderator. With these few words, I would request Dr. Prabhu Shankar to take over.
Sir. Good morning, everybody.
Dr. Prabhu Shankar.
Yes, sir. Good morning, everybody. At the ages of IACTA Bangalore chapter, I welcome Dr. Rajesh Arya to enlighten us about the artifacts and pitfalls in TE, sir. Dr. Over to Dr. Rajesh Arya, please.
Good morning, everyone. First of all, thanks to Dr. Murli, the Forum of Cardiac Anesthesia, to invite me to speak on this topic. And I think, am I audible to all? And my screen is visible to you?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. So, to come to the facts, that Forum of Cardiac Anesthesia is much more older or senior to IACTA itself. I think it was formed in somewhere in 80s, and IACTA came into existence in 1997. And there's a robust society, very senior people working there, and very active society. And the best part is that there is very good working relations with all the members of the society, which I have seen since last so many years. And the example is the successful conduct of TE workshop for last 15 years by Dr. Murli, and academic activities done by the members of the society. So compliments from me, from IACTA, to the Forum of Cardiac Anesthesia Bangalore. And thanks to Dr. Murli personally for putting few words and such a good words about me, that I resolved many issues of IACTA which were pending since long time. And I think I did my whatever best I could. And thanks to my colleagues, Dr. Nima, Dr. Sandeep, and Thomas, Dr. Tempe, and everybody. And thanks, Dr. Prabhu, for asking me to speak on this topic. So the today's topic given to me is the artifacts and pitfalls in PE. Any technique, any specialty, any good work has got some certain pitfalls and certain artifacts, certain physics defect of physics, which we are not able to resolve, which we keep on trying, which we keep trying to resolve, but still certain defects they remain there, and those defects and pitfalls should not interfere in our clinical judgment, and we should be knowing that this is wrong and this is actually not correct, and all those things, so that when we come to the diagnosis and communicating to the surgeons, we should be telling him the exact what the disease is and what the diagnosis is. So before going to the real pitfalls and artifacts, let us talk about certain things about the physics, like how ultrasound is generated, how the waves are created, and how it is seen on the screen. So in short, there is something called device which creates vibrations. So that is our transducer. By vibrations, it creates ultrasound. Ultrasounds means waves more than 20,000 hertz or 20 megahertz. They are not audible to human ears, but they are same like the sound waves, and they propagate through the medium in a sine wave form, and after being reflected from the medium, they are reflected back to the transducer, and finally we see on the screen. And in this Like when we do a tuning fork or something, any vibration, they go to the medium and they come to the human ear and we hear them. But ultrasounds are beyond the human ear's capacity to listen them, and they are reflected back, come to the transducer. They come to the transducer and then they are converted to electrical signals, and we see on the screen. Same with the echo. Echo is like you must have done, all of you must have done in your childhood. When you go near the well, you speak something and the sound comes back in a louder way or smaller way. So this is how the sound waves are reflected. They go down, they are reflected from the surface of water, and they come back and we hear them as receiver becomes our ears. Now, when the sound waves doesn't go simple linear fashion, they go in a waveform fashion. They go in a waveform fashion. So if there are two objects like this, and if the objects come within the range of ultrasound, they are reflected back on the screen as object. And if the object is outside the range of our ultrasound, they are not projected on the screen, though they may be there. So the resolution is ability to distinguish between the two structures that lie in close proximity in the path of ultrasound beam. So if the object comes in the path of ultrasound beam, object comes in the path of ultrasound beam, they are reflected on the screen as object. But if suppose this object is not in the path of the beam, so it won't be reflected on the screen, and we will see only one dot on the screen. So this is what the lateral resolution is called lateral resolution. The object lateral to the path of ultrasound wave will not be reflected on the screen. And sometimes if the object is one after another and they are very close to each other, they might be projected as single object on the screen, whereas in actually there are two objects. So this is called axial resolution. So one must understand what is lateral resolution, what is axial resolution, and it can create problems that we might miss some images or there will be distortion of the images. So how the ultrasound works? This is our transducer. From here the ultrasound wave goes like this. The part of the wave hits a structure or a flat structure and it's reflected back. This is called reflection. Reflection means the wave goes from a medium, hits an object, comes back, and we perceive on the transducer and on the screen as a structure. Okay. Second thing comes refraction. Whenever a wave passes from one medium to another medium of different densities, like here is suppose fluid and this is muscle, so they both have different densities of a medium. So when wave passes from one density to another density, it changes its pathway. The velocity changes and the direction changes. So this is called refraction. So the wave was going like this, but because of the muscle, it is refracted like this. So this is a refraction which may mimic on screen something else. Then third is a hits movable object like RBCs. When it hits at RBCs, so the wave coming like this may go like this, may go like this, may go like this. So there's scattering of the waves. And when there is scattering of the waves, the amount of waves coming back to the transducer are reduced. And the fourth one is attenuation. The tissues, they reduce the intensity of the wave. They absorb the ultrasound waves. So the amount of the waves coming are attenuated. You see the amount is reduced. What the wave started from here was this much frequency, and there's attenuation of the intensity of the wave. So these are the four components of how ultrasound waves, when generated from the transducer, goes to the structures and come back. So this attenuation, that is the medium absorbs it. Reflection, they are reflected away. There's scattering and there's absorption. Now, with this basic understanding of artifacts in TE, let us talk about the artifacts which we commonly see on examination. The common artifacts, they may be the 2D artifacts or they may be Doppler artifacts. So I've divided my talk into different 2D artifacts first, then the Doppler artifacts, and then the pitfalls. So coming on the 2D imaging artifacts. In two-dimensional, what we see on the screen and what actually is there inside, there may be some defect, some change or some ambiguity. If we call about the 2D echo artifacts, there may be missing structure, degraded images, falsely perceived images, or structure with registered location. The structure may not be present at that location, but what we see on the screen will be different. Acoustic shadowing. Acoustic shadowing, as I said, there is reflection and refraction. So when ultrasound beam falls on a strong reflectile object, for example, the rims of the artificial wall, the calcification of the wall, or some calcified thrombus or something, when the ultrasound wave falls on these structures, entire ultrasounds coming to that area are reflected back. These thick structures or hard structures, they don't allow the ultrasound to pass through and see the distal structures. Like if you see in this way, this patient has got aortic wall replacement, uh, the aortic wall short axis view, and this is the aortic wall rim. The ultrasound coming on this are reflected back. None of the ultrasound is passing through this. So this area becomes dark. So this is called acoustic shadowing, because the ultrasound cannot pass through the metallic wall and cannot show us the structures distal to that wall. Okay, so ultrasound beam falling on the strong reflectile object, there may be calcification of prosthetic metal wires, cannot pass through it. The area distal to this becomes appears darker. So what you do, how to correct it? If you want to see these structures, what to do? Take the image from the both sides of the reflecting object. It means if you want to see the other side of it, if you want to see the septum and the right ventricle and the left ventricle distal to this, you go to the transgastric view and look from below towards the aorta. Okay, so you can see the entire left ventricle, the interventricular septum and everything from the apex side, that is a deep transgastric view. Reverberations. Reverberations are the echo waves which are directly behind the reflector at distance multiple of the true distance. So there are certain reflector surface like plaque or calcification in the intima of the aorta. So the waves are reflected back, they hit the structure back, they come again. So there are multiple waves created by these reflecting surfaces. Repeated back and forth reflections of ultrasound waves between the two strong reflector causes reverberations. So if you have got aorta which has got calcification on both the proximal and the distal end, I mean anterior and posterior end, there will be a reflection of images between these two structures, and when we see on the screen, there will be multiple linear density distal to the reflecting surface. So this is what you see on the screen. So this is aorta. There are a lot of reflections coming from here. They go back, the ultrasound waves go back, come forward, go back, come forward. And finally, what we get on the screen is something like this. So this is a real true aorta, and this is a mirror image or reverberations effect of aorta. And you feel that this is single aorta, there is some dissection, which is actually not the case. So it might mimic you as a aortic dissection or true double limb barrel aorta or something like that. But the fact is that this is a reflection or mirror image artifact which is showing the normal aorta into two positions. One, how to differentiate between the two? The reverberation, the basic physics is that bouncing of ultrasound waves between the image and transducer. Distance traveled is twice and similar increase in the time component. Second image displayed at the twice the distance from the transducer. If I go back, if you see that this distance from here to here will be equal to the distance from here to here. So there will be the distance between the mirror image and the true image will be the same. So this is how you differentiate that this is a mirror effect and not a true structure. Sometimes there is calcification in aorta, and distal to the calcification, there are multiple images are formed which are not very clear, and they look like a comet trail, like a moving star or something. So if you see in the aorta, many times what we see, these are the comet trail appearing distal to the aorta because of this calcification. Similar in the prosthetic wall, you will find that the reflection of the rim at multiple places distal to that. The distance between each will be the same. That is a diagnostic feature in that. The distance between the images would be the same. Here comes the refraction. Refraction, as I said, when the ultrasound wave passes from one medium to another medium, there is change in the direction, and this is called refraction. So refraction sometimes mimic, and it is very not very infrequent to see that pulmonary artery catheter, which is in the pulmonary artery in this aortic arch short axis view, pulmonary artery and aorta, uh, may mimic that because of refraction. The ultrasound waves, they get refracted and they pass through the pulmonary artery, and when it comes on the screen, it looks like the pulmonary artery catheter in the aorta. So this must be kept in mind, that refraction occurs between the two different media present, and the amount of refraction depends on the difference in density between the two media. If it is passing from the air to tissues to blood to serous fluid, there will be refraction. There will be change in the direction, change in the pathway of the waves. This wave should have gone like this, but because of the refraction, it has moved towards the pulmonary artery and giving us a wrong impression that swine gas is in the aorta. Then there's side lobe artifacts. What are side lobe artifacts? At edge, the ultrasound beams are scattered from sides, and when they come in contact with the reflecting surface, they will represent that object is in the center of the main image. Right. On the sides, when they hit the surfaces, they get scattered, and when they get scattered and the return image comes, it looks like this portion is somewhere in the center of the image. Like if you see in this it looks like there is some VSD. This is a long axis view, mediasophageal long axis view, and because of the scattering, this tissue is scattered somewhere here. It looks like there is artifact and there is VSD. Uh, how to differentiate the artifacts are rigid and fixed versus mobile dissection flaps, or on color Doppler there is no margination of flow in artifact versus margination by true distal flap. So by putting color Doppler, we can differentiate between the true flap and a artifact. And how to correct it? We need to correct the lateral gain settings, increase the lateral gain settings wherever the defect is anticipated, and that can correct the side lobe artifact issue. Range ambiguity. In presence of high pulse rate frequency, deeper objects are make multiple images as transducer receives multiple images in lesser time. Whenever there is pulse rate frequencies, PRF is high, there are multiple waves coming to the transducer, and which confuses the transducer which one is correct, which one is wrong. So uh, it gives a multiple images of a object on the screen. Okay, so range ambiguity is something is related with the depth of the object. If you see, if the object is this place, a wave goes, come back, and then the time taken, by the time the next wave comes, the next wave is again generated. So if we adjust the depth settings, the range issue can be tackled easily. Next, very confusing thing is aliasing. Aliasing is something which is very important, especially whenever the flow rates are high. There is a mismatch between the sampling velocity versus the pulse repetition frequency (PRF). PRF and the aliasing velocity, we have to create a match between the two. So let us understand this physics a little more in detail. This ball is rotating in this circle at a rate of 8 versus 1. I mean 8 samples per rotation. The red ball is seen eight positions during the rotation. In the second, if you see, you can see the ball is at 8 places during one rotation. We can see the speed is slow. In this, you can see the ball at 4 positions in one rotation. In this, the speed increases. You can see the ball in single position, and in this, it is 1.5:1. So the speed with which the ball rotates and the speed which with our human eyes are tuned to see the image, there is an ambiguity between them. Well, the speed is slow. We can see the ball rotating at eight positions in A. If the speed is little increased, we can see it only at 4 places. If the speed is increased more, we can just perceive it at 2. And if speed is increased more, single. That's common when you see the car wheels. When the car is moving forward, sometimes we find that the wheel are moving in the reverse direction. Same happens in the helicopter. When we see the helicopter fins moving, we sometimes feel that they're moving in the opposite direction. Okay, so this is what we see on the screen, how it moves. If we further increase the speed, what happens? So analyzing the maximum velocity measured by the pulse wave, it is half of pulse repetition frequency. We should not keep more than half of pulse repetition frequency whenever we are doing a Doppler assessment, so that the analyzing velocity is within the range of our human eyes perception. If the Doppler velocity exceeds this, then the pulse wave is displayed on opposite direction. If the velocity increases, then we see the velocity on the other side of the baseline. So how to correct it? We should use the lower frequency probes, increase pulse rate frequency, that is, increase the velocity scale. We must adjust the baseline. We can bring the baseline little down so that all the waves they come on the one side of the baseline, and we must adjust the depth to the lowest possible level. Then comes the hosting. The same issue of aliasing when it happens in the color Doppler. It's called ghosting. The rapid flashes of red and blue color due to rapid moving solid tissues such as prosthetic walls. These are secondary reflections creating ghost images at the twice distance from the transducer. So the same image, the image which was actually like this, because of the aliasing, the same image is reflected as a mirror image, and this is a color Doppler mirror artifact basically. And to differentiate the color difference, then intensity of the ghost image is increased as compared to the original. Then there are certain parts of the cardiac structures which are not properly seen in 2D echocardiography. That is inadequate image when ultrasound beam is parallel to the interrogating structures. If you see in the midesophageal 4-chamber, 5-chamber view, we cannot see the chordate antennae in this image, because the direction of coordinate antenna is like this, and our ultrasound is also like this. So when the ultrasound and the direction of chordate antenna is parallel to each other, so there is no reflection from chordate antenna to the transducer. So we cannot see them on the screen. But when we go to the transgastric long axis view, the coordinate antennae are in this direction, and the ultrasound is in this direction. So they fall on these structures and reflect it back, and that's the reason we can see the primary, secondary, tertiary chordae beautifully in the long axis view of LV. Same way, there are certain structures like lateral wall or sometimes the interventricular septum. Because of the lateral side, the ultrasound are scattered away from these structures, and the reflection waves are not there, so we cannot see these structures on the screen. Then another artifact is many times what we see, the cautery being used by the surgeons. The cautery distorts the ultrasound waves, and we cannot see the structures. There are certain 3D artifacts, because three-dimensional, the transducer has to do such a laborious job that it has to throw so much of ultrasound in a three-dimensional ways, receive it back, and sometimes when the received waves are not properly stitched, there are gaps. Like if you see, there are gaps in between. So these gaps are called a stitch. The computer has to stitch all these ultrasounds coming back from the structure and make a proper display on the screen, and this causes defect in on the image. This is called stitch artifact. With the improvement in the machines and the hardware of ultrasound machines, more and more stitch artifacts have been resolved now. But still, if you're taking too much of tissues in single beam, the artifacts would be there. Now coming to the pitfalls. Pitfalls means structure seen, strange structure seen on the echo. These are, abnormal structures or structures which are normally not supposed to be there, but we find something present there. So let us see a few of them one by one. Crista terminalis. Crista terminalis, these are the bands present in the right atrium. These are muscular ridges. They start from the superior vena cava and to the right atrium and goes towards the junction of inferior vena cava. But when we see like this in the midesophageal bicaval view, sometimes you find there is something like this. So you may mimic this as a clot or some thrombus in the right atrium. which is a very, very strange situation, which was not preoperatively. So you may report it as thrombus in the right atrium, but actually it is crista terminalis, a little enlarged or little hypertrophied, and the position of this present, and if you see in the different views, you can really rule this out as a thrombus. Eustachian wall. Eustachian wall, these are the remnant of embryonic right venous wall. These are filamentous structure attached at the junction of right atrium in the IVC. And one must try to look at, especially in the minimal invasive surgeries or whenever there is a bicaval cannulation, one must look for it, because sometimes it interferes with the placement of IVC cannula or handling of the IVC. And the purpose of that this wall in the embryonic is that the IVC blood is directed towards the PFO through this wall. But as as we get the adult circulation, this becomes a rudimentary, and there is no physiological role of this wall in cardiac circulation. So it might mimic sometimes as a thrombus or some tumor or some wall. So one should be distinguishing it from the tumor is that it's a filamentous structure as typical attachment near the IVC opening into the RA. And the best we used to see is a bicaval view. Then comes the Thebesian wall. Thebesian wall is again a valvular structure which is present between the coronary sinus and right atrium. So whenever there is a requirement to put a retrograde cannula or something like that, one must look for it, because it may not allow the placement of cannula, or there may be injury if we struggle through the wall or handle the retrograde cannula through the wall. So it might mimic again as the intracardiac thrombus or tumor. The best way to see this is the mediasophageal bicaval view. Little probe pushed little down to look at the IVC and the RA junction and the coronary sinus over there. That double barrel view typically can show this wall if present. And to distinguish, is again the filamentous structures, and typical attachment at near the coronary sinus will define this, that the structure is Thebesian wall. Chiari network. Chiari network is again an embryological structure similar to Eustachian wall. There is long filamentous structure attached to the Thebesian Eustachian wall to crista terminalis or the right atrial floor. So the right atrial floor is half of it is a rough and filamentous sometimes, and there are trabeculations. Sometimes these trabeculations become big and then aneurysmal sort of thing, and they hang freely in the right atrium, and they mimic as a clot or some abnormal structure in the RA. But basically these are Chiari network, and to distinguish from the thrombus or tumor, these are filamentous structure, and typical insertion point at the Eustachian wall and the crista terminalis will show that these are nothing but Chiari network. And the view is the mediasophageal bicaval view, and the four chamber view are the best to look their attachments properly. Sometimes the septum looks very thick, and it mimics that there is some tumor or some thickness, and the membrane sometimes is very floppy, so it looks like a dumbbell shape, or we call it as a lipomatous hypertrophy interatrial septum, and it is nothing but a hypertrophy of the septum, and the membranous part is thin, which looks like a dumbbell. The view to see this is four chamber or bicaval view. Like this one is a bicaval view, and in between the four chamber also comes. Aneurysm of interatrial septum. The membranous part of interatrial septum is sometimes little floppy. It moves up and down in the right atrium, left atrium during the cardiac systole, cardiac cycle. By definition, the base should be more than 1.5 centimeter, and the exertion in the atria should be more than 1.1 centimeter on both sides. If the septum is bouncing on both sides in the LA and the RA more than 1.1 centimeter, then we call it as aneurysm of the interatrial septum. Might mimic as some tumor or some thrombus. And clinical importance is that there is chances of vegetations or some microthrombi getting attached to it, which may be clinically significant, and which might require, if you're doing some other surgery, if you find something like it, you can handle it and you can correct by reducing the size of the membranous septum. Again, the views are mediasesophageal 4-chamber and bicable view. Enlarged coronary sinus. Normally, coronary sinus is less than 10 millimeter of mercury, and the typical view to see is the lower esophageal coronary sinus view, where you retroflex your probe and take it little away, because coronary sinus is very close to the PE probe once in the esophagus, and it may be due to the size. The coronary sinus may be large because of some venous opening into it, like LSVC is there, or some AV type of canal defect is there, or there is a right-sided pressure hypertension, like pulmonary stenosis or tricuspid stenosis. Then in all these conditions, the right atrial pressures are increased, which are reflected back to the coronary sinus, and the coronary sinus may dilate it. And if sinus more than 10 millimeters should be called as an enlarged coronary sinus. Uh, it should not be confused with sometimes with the mitral annular abscess or aneurysm of the left circumflex artery. Color Doppler will show that blue color in this sinus, which is draining into the right atrium, which can differentiate it from the other differential diagnosis. Pectinate muscles in the left atrial appendage. So left atrial appendage is a muscular structure which take parts in systole and diastole. In the systole it contracts and diastole it relaxes, as with the left atrium. And the wall of the left atrium is appendage is made of muscles. So there are certain few muscles which are hypertrophied, which looks like mimic like thrombus or clot in the left atrium. So one should be very, making certain efforts to find out whether they are really clot, or they're just the pectinate muscles present in the atrial appendage, which are little hypertrophied. So most of the time these pectinate muscles are fixed and they are contractile, whereas the clot is may not be contractile. Commodorean ridge is well known now. This is a ridge between the opening of left upper pulmonary vein and the left atrial appendage. Initial stages, it used to be taken that this is a clot in the left left atrium, but over a period, it is well known that this is the reflection of the ridge between the left upper pulmonary vein and the left atrial appendage, and it's a fixed structure. And color Doppler will show the flow of pulmonary vein, which is above the ridge in the red color, and flow velocity in the left atrial appendage. The view is standard mediasesophageal 2-chamber view, somewhere around 65-70 degrees. Sometimes when we come off the pump, we find some structure in the left atrium like this. So it may be inverted left atrial appendage, which can be congenital also. But most of the time, the situation comes when this structure is seen as inverted appendage, and this is a reflection of low velocities or low pressures in the left atrium, which has sucked the appendage inside the left atrium. And the treatment is nothing but just to give the volume, and surgeon can manually see that the appendage is sucked inside. So if we fill the left atrium, it comes back and the issue is resolved. And this is another situation where we find the left atrial appendage inverted is if the patient is on LVAD. When the LVAD device is sucking too much in the left atrium, the left atrial, left ventricle and left atrial pressures come so low that the appendage is sucked in, which can interfere with the flow across the mitral wall. So whenever there is patient on left atrial appendage, LVAD situation, or when we are coming off, and we find some structure like this in the left atrium, we should not miss it as a clot. Just fill the left atrium with volume and hope that the appendage goes back to its position. A left atrial membrane is again, it may mimic like core triatrium or something, but if you find some membrane, one should look for it. It might look as a elongated Commodorean ridge, and the color Doppler will give you the diagnosis about the flows across the membrane. Moderator band, it arises from the septum and goes towards the free wall of the right ventricle. it forms the base for our anterior papillary muscles. From the base of anterior papillary muscles to the interventricular septum, it might mimic as a clot or some tumor, but this is a typical position and a typical course of the band, which can give the correct diagnosis that this is nothing but a moderator band which may be enlarged, especially in TOF patients or DORB patients. This band may be enlarged. False tendon is similar like the moderator band on the right side. There may be false tendon in the left side, which may mimic as a clot. With the multiple angles and multiple views and rotations, and especially with the 3D, we can rule out that this is not a clot but a false tendon present in the left ventricle. Papillary muscles may be bifid. Bifid papillary muscles, especially in the posterior medial papillary muscles, which looks like there are two papillary muscles, or the one may mimic as a clot in the left ventricle. But if you see in multiple directions, you will find that this is not a clot but a papillary muscles. And if you do a M mode on this, you can see that this is contracting and relaxing, which means this is not a clot but a muscle. Lamblase excursions, these are the small tiny structures present on the basis of which are present on the basis of the, if you see in this basis of the aortic wall, which might mimic as a vegetation, but these are nothing but the lamblase excursions, and doesn't require much treatment. Sometimes fibroelastomas of the wall may be there, but it's really difficult to diagnose. So, and then not treated unless they are causing any valvular dysfunction. Transverse sinus is again a place, this is a space between the aortic wall and the left atrium, aorta and the left atrium, and this might mimic as a abscess or cyst or tumor or aneurysm of any structure around it. But with the multiple angles, we can see that there won't be any flow coming to this. This is not expansile. This doesn't expand, and absence of flow on color will show that this is nothing but a transverse sinus. Pericardial space you may find something like this, which may mimic there is some abscess or something in the pericardial space, but a round structure on the lateral side of left atrium is mostly, if present, is a LSVC. And the bubble test from the left upper extremity injection will show the bubbles in this, if this is LSVC, and should not be misjudged as a abscess or cyst or inverted left atrial appendage. And with this, I conclude that pitfalls are certain things which we should know that these structures may mimic like something wrong or something abnormal. But with a good knowledge of all these, we can give the surgeons a good diagnosis. We have published 5 manuscripts about pitfalls and artifacts on our eco-library. These are the publications on eco-library. And I think I request all of you people to just go to the eco-library, and everything is given there. So to conclude, artifacts are quite common in echocardiography. Always check for machine settings. Look for any abnormal structures with multiple views and angles. Always correlate the echo findings with the clinical examination, and always good to have a second opinion if you are confused or there is any doubt. There is no harm in going for the second opinion. And I again thank Dr. Prabhu and all the viewers, and if there is any questions, I'll be happy to take that. Thank you.
Thank you,
sir,
Rajesh,
for
that excellent. Yes, excellent presentation. Very well done. Dr. Prabhu, please carry on the moderation.
yes. Thank you, sir, for making us various pitfalls and various artifactal images. It is very essential to know the Doppler physiology, physics, to understand the way and the proper anatomy, to understand the uh, to differentiate the various artifactal images in the echoes. I have seen so many. Sometimes the pulmonary catheter tip, it goes to the coronary sinuses, sir. Most of the time. Hello.
Yes.
So how to identify? How to distinguish?
See, the pulmonary artery catheter going to coronary sinus, there's a possibility. But if you are doing if you got an echo probe inside, you can definitely see in the RV inflow outflow view and where your tip of coronary, this Swan-Ganz catheter is going. So RV inflow outflow is the view is the best view to guide you because you can see entirely from the right atrium, tricuspid wall, right ventricle, RVOT and pulmonary artery. So that gives you exact direction and pathway where your catheter is going.
Thank you, sir. Any regarding any questions? Welcome to ask. Anybody has got the doubts or anything, you can ask.
Hello.
Yes, yes.
Yes, Sanjeevani, please carry on.
Rajesh, it was wonderful as usual, very crystal clear, and I enjoyed it. Just a few comments that when you see pectinate muscles, so it is customary to take velocity over there. And if it is more than 50, there is no clot. That's what is the basic understanding. That
No,
is one thing.
I think we should not
You
confuse.
you have added it. I'm sorry if you have already told it.
No, I've told it that the pectinate muscles are there. These are the small muscles which sometimes are bigger
Yes.
in size and they are attached.
Yes.
So I don't
Yes.
think we should correlate the pectinate muscles with the velocity. Because
No.
velocity is the health of the left atrium overall. They don't have anything to do with the pectinate muscles.
No. They have nothing to do with pectinate. But if we are taking it as a thrombus, if someone is taking it as a thrombus, and if the velocity over there is more, there is no chance of thrombus over there. That is one
Yes.
more additional thing to be diagnosed by Doppler.
Yes. If the velocity is more than 50, then the LA is healthy and there is no thrombus. That is very true.
That another important thing, you have shown it very beautifully. That is different views for this. You have shown not Chiari, sorry, Thibesian, and the previous one is
Station wall.
station wall and Thibesian. When you showed both the figures, please tell all the students that the coronary sinus view how to take and how to visualize IVC, so that otherwise it may be confusing sometimes.
Right. So first I tell you the coronary sinus view. Once you are in
Yes.
the midesophageal four-chamber view, keep your angle at 0 degree. Go little deep, a couple of not centimeter, a couple of millimeters only. Go little deep, and you retroflex your probe. Take the probe little away from the heart tissues. Retroflex it, because your probe is just close to the coronary sinus, and with the frequency probe we use, we cannot pick up the coronary sinus from there. If you take little away, then there is a medium between the coronary sinus and the probe, and then you will find that just above the mitral annulus or the septum, there is a tube coming, which is opening into the right atrium. Okay, you can zoom that area. Fine. Now, to be very sure that this is coronary sinus and nothing else, you put color into that. And if you find it is a blue color means moving away. That means the blood is flowing from the coronary sinus to the right atrium. Okay, so that is the confirmatory that this is coronary sinus. You can freeze it. You can take it. You can size it. If it is more than 10 millimeter, we call it dilated. Then when your surgeon is putting the coronary sinus cannula, you can exactly see how much length it is gone inside, because sometimes the right coronary vein opens quite proximal to the opening, and if your right coronary vein is obstructed by the coronary cannula, retrograde cannula, then your right side cardioplegia delivery will be hampered and the RV dysfunction will come after the CPV. So you must be very clear to. Sometimes it's very easy to see the right coronary vein which is opening to coronary sinus. So try to, with expertise, you try to look for the coronary veins also opening into the coronary sinus, and make sure that the cannula is not obstructing the drainage of them. Now coming to the IVC. IVC, you can see, you go little more deep and go to the bicable view, 90 degrees. When you go to the 90 degrees and little push the probe more inside towards the diaphragm, then you will find there is opening of IVC, and just above that is the opening of coronary sinus at 90 degree, because now it is just the opening of coronary sinus is very close to the IVC, and both the things you can see, that particular view is called the double barrel view. So there you can see the eustachian wall, and you can probably, if it is present, if it is enlarged, you can see the Thebesian wall also. I think
Yes.
I think with practice people can understand it much better.
Yes, yes. And Rajesh, you have shown beautifully left SVC, which is really difficult to see, and we diagnose it sometimes only by looking at the coronary sinus. But the image which you had shown was beautiful.
Yeah, I
It
mean,
was
in the certain ASDs, you many times you find it, and when you are
yes,
doing a minimal invasive cardiac surgery, that time you must look for LSVC, because if
yes.
LSVC is present, the minimal invasive mitral wall or bicable cannulation is not possible, and you cannot go on the pump, or you have to tell the perfusionist to give another cannula which you can put in the coronary sinus and LSVC. So this is very important to look for, rule out presence of LSVC whenever you are doing a minimal invasive surgery.
Yes, yes. And can you please show this Chiari network image again, if you can?
I can.
Chiari network, if you can.
I can show the TRA network. This is coronary sinus. Yeah. So this is TRA network is in between, but trabeculations which are normally fixed with the wall of right atrium, they become hypertrophied and they hang loose in the right atrium. So the clinical importance is that the cannulation becomes sometimes very difficult, because your cannula gets stuck into those trabeculations which are hanging loose, and that might mimic as some membrane or some thrombus or some clot in the right atrium. So once you
And
find that, you must look for the attachment of this Chiari network, how it is attached, how long is it, and probably you can guide the surgeon when putting the cannula how to go about it. But because once they put the cannula, they can open the right atrium and then cut it out, all these free structures.
yes, sir. And important differential diagnosis for this Chiari is core triatrium dexter. That is
Yes.
how it is on the left side, on the right side. So sometimes dexter may be there or Chiari network may be there.
So I'm
Another
not,
thing, what is seen over there is pulmonary catheter, isn't it?
yes, that is pulmonary catheter probably
Yeah,
going into the right side.
beautiful.
I've not much of experience about the congenital much, because we are not doing it, so I cannot say the cord item dexter is a strange thing for me.
Okay, nice. Excellent.
Rajesh, lovely presentation.
Thank you,
I
sir.
enjoyed your talk, and the demonstration of the aliasing using that circle and the red dots was very well done. My question is, most often the surgeons ask you to tell whether there is an apical clot, LV apical clot in the theater.
Mm-hmm.
So the what is your strategy when such things are such requests are made?
Yes, it
Because
is
I sometimes
really.
find it difficult
Mhm.
because I go by the presence of wall motion abnormalities. If there is a clot-like structure with associated with the wall motion abnormality at that region, it's probably a clot. If it is moving very well, it is unlikely to be a clot. So,
Yes,
what
sir.
is your strategy in these cases?
Yes, sir. Very true and very confusing issue of apical clot versus the muscle or versus hypertrophy of the apex or segmental
Yes.
hypertrophy, or maybe some intramural clot and then muscles. So these are all possibilities over there. So
Yes.
and we are doing a lot of coronaries and these things do come day to day. So, and I asked many experts about this also.
I see.
So, what I do in my practice is that if the patient has got anterior wall MI and
Yeah.
aneurysm of the apex, then there is high possibility that the structure seen is a clot.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. In absence of anterior wall MI or apical aneurysm, the high possibility that these are some bifid papillae muscle or some part of papillae muscle. Still to be very sure, what I do, that I do a M mode on this. The problem with the
Right.
T is,
Right.
the problem with the T is that the apex is not very well seen on T
Yes.
in any of the views. Okay. Still, whatever I can see, if I see that structure, it means it is seen on the echo, and on that I put a M mode. M mode gives me a very good frame rate, and with that frame rate, I can see whether that structure is contracting or relaxing. I
Very
just
good.
look at the size of that structure. Even a millimeter of a contraction and relaxation will give me a diagnosis that this is nothing
Yes.
but
Yes.
muscle. But if it
Yes.
is absolutely fixed and it is hyperlucent on echo, then still it gives me a doubt that it might be some clot or some calcification over there.
Sure. Sure. Have you used the contrast echocardiography in such cases?
The contrast in the operation theater we have not used in the I mean echo lab on the transthoracic or sometime transesophageal the echo lab they people do, but in the operation theater, to be very frank, we don't have time to do for contrast,
Yeah.
uh, and
Yes. Yes.
this is the fact I must
Thank you.
admit.
Thank you, Rajesh. Thank you so
Uh, Murlidhar,
much. Yes. Yes.
for this LV apical clot, one can zoom the whatever you are seeing apex, you zoom it or make it very big and put
Yeah.
color.
Yeah. Yeah.
That is some, though it is a crude method, but gives some idea.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for that.
Sir,
Are
there
there
is one
any
question
questions in the
from.
chat box?
Yes, sir.
Prabhu, can you read it out? Any questions in the chat box? There is one question. Explain
I
about
don't.
continuous wave and the cursor position.
Continuous wave and cursor position. To be very frank,
Yes.
if we understand the physics of Doppler, there is hardly a difference of position of cursor when you are doing a continuous wave, because once you are using a continuous wave Doppler, it picks up the velocity of everything that comes on the way from the transducer till
Yeah.
till your line is going, entire line. Only thing, if you put little close to the transducer, your baseline will be little high. If you put little away from the distant line of the frame, your baseline will be little low. Okay, but as a matter of principle, the continuous wave Doppler will measure all the velocities of any structure, any orifice coming on the way to the ultrasound beam. So if you're in the transgastric view, you put the cursor little lower down because your aortic wall comes on the lower part of the screen. If you are doing on the mitral regurgitation in mid-esophageal flow chamber, you keep your cursor at the mitral wall so that it will come on the upper part of the screen. So for the continuous wave Doppler, the direction of the cursor, direction of the beam is more important than the point of the cursor where you have put it.
Yeah.
In pulse wave Doppler, exactly you can pick up the sample volume from the place where your cursor is pointed. So in
Yeah.
that, if you are measuring the velocities, you put it at the tip of the leaflet. If you are measuring the pressure gradients, you put at the annulus. This is what is the standard recommended by the guidelines.
Can the focus setting help in reducing side lobe artifacts?
Yes, for the side lobe artifacts, you need to address your lateral gain settings. And lateral gain settings are there in all the machines. What the Philips we use, there are two knobs for the right and left lateral gain settings, so that you give more of the ultrasound to that area. Settings is what you decide that about of suppose there is 100 waves are going, how many waves goes to which part. You can direct those waves to that. So wherever there is a defect or there is an artifact, you can give more waves to that area, so that more waves go, more reflection comes back, and you can identify the structure properly. So lateral gain settings are to be done for that, and reducing side lobe artifact, especially in a sinotubular junction atheromatous, which was, let me read it out. Especially in a sinotubular junction atheromas, which sometimes appear as long calcific ascending aortas. Sinotubular junction atheromas. See, in a calcific disease of aorta, the atheromas would come there. And definitely, if in the long axis view, LV long axis view, the sinotubular junction comes right in the center of the screen. So you can avoid the side lobe artifact by assessment of ST junction in long axis view.
Dr. Prabhu, final comments.
Yes, sir.
And close the session.
Thank you, sir, for excellent presentations. To identify the pitfall or artifacts, you're supposed to know the physics, Doppler physics, the structure of anatomy, and the disease also, sir, pathology of the disease, so that you can, with the various position and views, you can identify the artifact and you can
Yes.
Yes,
you
sir.
can
Yes.
identify. Your enlighten is very good. This one, sir. Thank you for. It's difficult. Usually, it's difficult for especially the physics, reverberation, and so many things. You made us very easy to understand. Thank you for. I will. Thank you, sir. Once again.
The only thing I
Thank
can
you.
request all the viewers just to go to the Eco Library, and in 2017 we have published 5 sessions on them. And anything you have a query, I hope you will find the answer there.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, yes, yes.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank
Thank
you,
you.
everybody.
Thank you. Have a nice day, and
Rakesh, for that excellent talk.
great
Prabhu
Sunday to all.
Shankar,
Thank
and
you.
other faculty members, Sanjeevni Namdar, and participants. Thank you very much. We'll meet you again tomorrow in the evening. Thank you.
It was a pleasure to hear to you.
Thank you.
Bye bye. Good day.